I acknowledged in my response to the urgent question from Graham Simpson yesterday the significance of the issues raised by the BBC Disclosure Programme, and having watched the programme last night, I reiterate my concerns about the issues that were raised. Graham Simpson asked me yesterday what the government was doing about that, and I responded by indicating that we had taken the step to ask our Permanent Secretary to raise these issues that had been put to us at the end of last week with Audit Scotland, and I welcome the statement made by the Auditor General yesterday afternoon that Audit Scotland will consider whether further scrutiny work is required. And as I confirmed yesterday to Parliament, and I hope this gives Mr Bibby some reassurance, the Government, CMAL and Ferguson's will fully engage with and support any work that is undertaken by Audit Scotland in that respect. In relation to the procurement of 801 and 802 and the delivery of those vessels, I have been, again, I've accepted this in Parliament. I accept my share of collective responsibility for the fact that these vessels have not been delivered on time and on budget. I deeply regret that. I regret that for the impact on the reputation of Ferguson's. I regret it for the impact it's had on islanders, because, again, in relation to Mr Bibby's points, had these ferries been delivered, we would have had 2 newer vessels at an earlier stage, providing resilience within the network, and would have given us the ability to have reserve vessels available in the way that we used to have with the MV Isle of Arran, which this would have given us the capacity to have available for particularly winter resilience. Of course.
Willie Rennie.
Comment on a letter to the Net Zero Committee this afternoon, which is indicating that Ferguson's are going to delay the 802 vessel by another quarter, and what will the implications of that be for the island communities that would serve?
Deputy First Minister.
I'm obviously aware of the letter that Ferguson's have sent to the Net Zero Committee today, and what the Government will be doing is interrogating the report that has come from Ferguson's with appropriate due diligence to determine what is our response to the points that have been raised by Ferguson's. But I stress, and I'll come on to say this in a moment, there is a necessity for sustained investment in the ferry network, and the Government has, of course, committed to that in other respects. Before I... of course.
Edward Mountain.
Very grateful, Deputy First Minister. We all know that delays cost money. There's no mention of the extra cost in that letter to the Net Zero Committee. Will the Government be worried about that, and what will they be doing?
Deputy First Minister.
That's precisely what I've addressed in my response to Mr Rennie. We'll be carrying out due diligence on the points that are raised with us by Ferguson's and the update that has come forward, because obviously I want to minimise any further cost to the public purse as a consequence. Before I leave the question of the procurement of 801 and 802, I want to use this opportunity to place on record my deep personal appreciation to the contribution of Alex Logan and John McMonigal, who appeared in the disclosure programme last night, 2 fine individuals that I met when I went, I met them many years ago before the Ferguson's got into difficulties in 2014, and throughout they have been faithful servants of Ferguson's, and I thank them for their contribution and the generous welcome they've always extended to me in my associations with them. Over the course of the last 10 years or so, the Government's investment in ferries has increased from £140 million in 13-14 to £315 million in this financial year. If Katie Clark would... I'm afraid I'm going to have to draw my remarks to... Well, I've got to watch my time. I've got some ground to cover, which indicates the significant investment the Government has made in ferries. There has been commitments to new routes that have been delivered, Malach Loch Boisdale, for example, Ardross and Campbelltown, extra sailings to Colonsay, to Col and Tiree. There have been a whole host of elements of the ferries plan implemented as we expanded services. We've procured 801 and 802 and also the 2 Isla-class ferries that will be delivered in 24-25. So there is expansion of the network and investment in the network. In relation to performance, I think it's important. Obviously, any ferry that's cancelled is inconvenient to either islanders or to members of the public, whatever their reasons for being in the islands. But I would point out that in 2021, only 1% of services were cancelled because of mechanical issues. 3 times as many were cancelled because of weather conditions. And obviously there's been a disruption to the network because of COVID and COVID infections spreading. Let me close, Presiding Officer, on what I think is an interesting element of the debate that is emerging around Project Neptune, which the Transport Minister briefed Parliament about 3 weeks ago. And it's raised also by the contribution by Katie Clark. And I wasn't able to follow all of the elements of what Katie Clark was raising, but I think what she raised was the importance of there being no unbundling, which the government agrees with, that there would be no privatisation, which the government agrees with, and I welcome the opportunity to place that on the record.
Deputy First Minister, I'm afraid you're over time.
Just my last sentence, Presiding Officer. Graham Simpson, of course, on the radio this morning made it clear, and in his speech today, the Conservatives are interested in privatising the CalMac network. And let me put it on the record, the government will have nothing to do with that.